Hello and welcome to Work to Game. My name is Brian, and in this guide we're going to be focusing on everything you need to know when playing Final Fantasy XIV with a controller. If you're new to Final Fantasy XIV or just want to learn how to play this MMO with a controller, this guide is for you. If you're looking for something specific, be sure to check the description below for timestamps to the different sections of this video, or check out our controller guide playlist, the link will be there as well. This video is brought to you by our wonderful YouTube members and Patreons, whom without their support we couldn't do what we do. So if you find this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button and share it out with your friends and thank our supporters, or consider becoming one yourself. So this video is going to be broken up into several different sections. Part 1 is going to focus in on customizing your controller. Part 2 is going to focus in on mastering the world, movement, and the camera. And finally, Part 3 is going to focus in on the battle system, targeting, and much more. So let's just do this thing. So playing Final Fantasy XIV has never been easier, and it is the premier MMORPG to date. One reason for this is its ability to be played on consoles and PC. Now, along with its support for keyboard and mouse, you have the support for the controller. You can use a PlayStation 4 controller or an Xbox PC controller, whatever really your preference might be. Now, personally, I find the controller is the most comfortable to use, especially in longer play sessions, and I use it as my primary way to play on PC. But you can use any input method you want to play this game. So let's go ahead and get started. First up, we need to configure and calibrate our controllers. They are fully customizable, and if you're like me, you're going to have a preference for where your jump is located, and you can easily make these changes. From the start menu, select configuration. You can also do this from inside the game as well, but from here you're going to see a variety of different settings. To get into the gamepad settings, you need to go down to the gamepad icon. Your first option is to enable the gamepad. You're going to want to make sure this is enabled for you to actually use a controller. Second is your device. If you have more than one controller hooked up, you're going to see them listed here. Then you're going to see gamepad type. This is where from the game it's going to communicate what kind of buttons do you need. You can see here I'm using ABXY, which is essentially a standard Xbox controller, but you have access to the PlayStation and even the PlayStation 4 touch options. This is really handy, especially if you are using the PlayStation 4 controller on a PC. This will end up helping you not have to do some translation between A, B, X, and Y, and XO square triangle. So just keep that in mind. Now you have a couple options here. You can say keep gamepad enabled when client isn't active. This is a really handy thing, especially if you're running a multiple monitor setup. That way you don't end up finding yourself moving, clicking off, and then like, why is the game not responding? You can also enable vibration if your controller supports it, but if you're like me and somebody who likes to set the controller down for a cutscene, it might not necessarily do well on a desk. So use that for your use that to your best of ability. Next, we have enable LB plus L, essentially the left stick, to enable auto run. You definitely want to keep this on. This is an MMO. There's going to be distances that you have to travel. And then you also want to say enable zoom via the right stick, and especially clicking on the right stick itself. This is very handy for when increasing the various window sizes of the game window. You have your analog sensitivity. You can adjust this as well, and enable virtual mouse. How I've got it set up right now, I would recommend is the default settings for you, but please feel free to obviously configure it and make it your own. Now, how can you change your button mappings? This is under button configuration and begin. Pull up this menu and you're going to see obviously your ability to change every button that you want. Now, I do not use the default button setup. For example, my jump is set to X and my map is set to Y. So if you're watching me play, if you're watching me in this case use the controller itself, you're going to notice that when I press Y, it's going to bring up the menu or the map, and then also if I press X, I'm going to jump. That is not the default. You can always easily switch to the default right here, and you can see here jump is set to Y and X is open map and submenus. You can set this to easily do what you want it to do. So I prefer X to be jump, and I prefer Y to be open map and sub commands. That's just my preference for how the game functions. But feel free to set this and play with it however you want. From here, you can also do a calibration on your sticks. This is important for testing out your buttons and how the sticks are aligned. I'm not going to calibrate it in this video, but if you're having any trouble or if your sticks feel a little floaty, you can come and check out this system as well. So now how do you get to this menu from within the game? So it's as easy as hitting start, going to system and system configuration to be able to access any and all of these settings. Some settings are going to apply immediately, some are not. So just play around with it, see what works and what feels best for you. So when you first start the game asks you if you want to play on a keyboard or mouse or controller. If you're really not used to the controller, you perhaps selected keyboard and mouse. So how do you switch over to the controller mode? go into System, Character Configuration, and you're going to see Gamepad mode and Mouse and Keyboard mode. There are two different settings here, and you can easily toggle between the two. You can also see how my UI is updated and changes completely. So that is just how that is done and managed. So let's move on to part 2, Mastering the World and the Camera. So what are the two different movement types? Under System, Character Configuration, and under Control Settings, you're going to see Standard and Legacy type movement. Now I am Legacy based, and that is camera based. This is on by default for controller players. But if I close this, moving the left stick allows me to move my character around. Moving the right stick allows my, obviously, camera to move around me, giving me a lot of movement and flexibility. So if I press backwards, that's going to run that direction. If I press forwards, it's going to run forward, and so on and so forth. But maybe you don't like that. Other people have preferences. Switching it over to character based, I can press backwards to walk backwards. I can press forward to walk forward. Most games in which that you use various controllers have this default movement where forward is always forward, and then you have to like strafe left and right. So if you like to use your sticks for strafing, this is going to be the controller setup for you. You can see that I kind of walk backwards slowly by default, move in for the kill as needed. Still, my preference is going to be that of the Legacy type. And you have a couple of options regarding activate standard auto type fly and auto dive and maintain camera distance. So kind of play around with that, see what works for you. So you might be asking yourself, how do I manage my camera controls? Under Control Settings, under General, scroll down, you'll see Camera Controls. This is going to give you the ability to manage both mouse and keyboard and gamepad. So if you end up being where you switch between the two because you're just that kind of awesome, you want to go in and play around with this. Again, you'll have also options for inverted control for reverse, third person, and first person. That's usually my preference in video games. I know I'm a little bit weird in that regards, but that's just me. So you might be asking yourself, how do I auto run? Well, in the game, we ended up setting it to where we could auto run. So just pressing in any direction, tap the L1 or the L bumper, and that's going to set you to auto run. Now I can take my hand off the controller. I can still use my right hand to move this all around, and I can still steer. So if I go left or right, it's going to allow me to steer and continue to auto run itself. Pulling backwards to kind of go in the opposite direction will stop, or tapping the button again will turn off auto run. So now how do you sheath or draw out your weapon? You can actually click down on the left stick, and this is going to bring out your weapon of choice. This is important because it's going to play into how you target different things later, because you can have different targeting priorities when your weapon is out versus when your weapon is away. So left click again, and then that goes in and out. Easy breezy, beautiful. So now you also might be asking, well, how do I add and remove and manage my abilities on my hotbars without using a mouse? Pretty simple, but let's go over it in detail. Now I can hold down the left or right trigger in any way to obviously use an ability if I so choose. But what I can also do is now I can press essentially the select or back button, and on PlayStation it would be the click, that select pad you would click to be able to go into edit mode. This is going to allow you to edit your hotbar. From here I can move abilities around by just pressing the button on for the ability. So these abilities don't exist, so pressing Y and then pressing B will allow me to change the position for each abilities. Because these abilities don't exist, you can double tap and it's going to ask you if you want to delete them from the hotbar, in which this case I'm going to say yes. So how do I add abilities? Under Actions and Traits, Actions, you can go and set this to a hotbar. You're going to see the tooltip hinted below. So mine is the menu button, which will be Y. Yours by default is going to be X. Pressing Y will allow me to assign it to any position I want. Using the holding down the trigger will allow me to set the ability. So is it going to be Y, A, B, X, or up, down, left, right? So I have an ability that I'm not using here because it's no longer in the game, and I can just tap this position that I want it to go, and it's going to return me focusing back here. So if you're like me and you have your hotbar 3 kind of floating out here in space, and you don't have access to a keyboard or a mouse to be assigned these icons just floating out here easily, you can enable what's called virtual mouse mode. Pressing down on the left bumper and clicking the right stick will bring up virtual mouse. This makes your right stick act as your mouse cursor and essentially allowing you to go ahead and drag and drop. Now if I left trigger here, that's gonna be my left click. I can move these things around and place them. Right trigger would actually bring up kind of my menu sub options, etc. So just like before, I can go to Actions and Traits, Actions, and if I go in here, I can click and drag. It's not as efficient, but it is possible to do so. Now, if you're having a hard time assigning icons here or removing them, make sure you turn on hotbar 1. There is a locking feature for the hotbar, and if that's enabled, it's not going to let you drag and drop things on and off the hotbar. Okay, so with that done, pressing left bumper 1 and right clicking there essentially will take me out of virtual mouse mode and return my camera back to the right stick the way that it's the way that the good 12 intended in this case. So how do I set up different hotbars? Well, first you have your cross hotbar, you have what's called a double cross hotbar, and you have an expanded hotbar. So under System, Character Configuration, and then under Hotbar Settings, this is where it's all going to be managed. So first you're going to want to go in here and make sure that you're set in hold mode. You can play around with hold, toggled, and mixed. I would recommend doing so, especially as you're starting out to get a preference. All these features are available in hold. Not all of them are going to be available in toggled and mixed. So just keep that in mind. So you're going to always want to display the cross hotbar. Return to double cross hotbar after cross hotbar input is a preference. This is allowing me to use one-off abilities with a double tap, use the ability, and then return to the hotbar itself. And then I have it to where I position the double cross hotbar separately. But for customization's sake, to enable your expanded cross hotbar and your double cross hotbar, you need to go to the custom tab here. And this is going to have you turn these things on, as well as enable whether you just want the 4 buttons or you want all 8 buttons for each. This will also have you assign it to which hotbar it's essentially a shortcut for. So keep that in mind. That's what you're going to need to use, and that's what you're going to want to use. There's a couple other things when we talk about weapon sheathing and customization listed here below, so keep that in mind. You can play around with this with your heart's content. What this tells me is that when my weapon is sheathed, I want to be able to toggle between 1, 7, and 8, and when my weapon is drawn, I only want it to keep it locked on 1. So to kind of illustrate that, what I'm talking about is the right bumper here. Pressing right bumper will toggle through the different hotbars, 7, 8, 1, 7, 8, 1. Holding it down, pressing either Y, B, A, X, up, down, left, and right in this case, will allow me to manually select which hotbar I need. But if I take out my weapon and I just tap the RB, you can see that it's not changing. So this is going to help keep you locked whenever you're fighting or whether you're just in the city. So play around with it. That's also why it's important to be able to know whether your weapons are out or whether they're whether you're ready for fight to fight, or if you're ready to I guess casually saunter about the city. So we got some more player controls here for you. Like, how do you easily switch between first person and third person? If nothing is selected, you can click the right stick, and this is going to move you into the first person camera. Clicking it again will take it back to a third person camera mode. If you want to have more control over your camera, hold down the left bumper and you can use your right stick to zoom in and zoom out. There's even a setting in your system that says if you zoom all the way in, it will automatically transition you to first person camera. I'm going to let you choose to use that at your own discretion there. But this will help you give a lot of ability to see what's going on around you, or to get in tight for those really close, awesome photos that you so desire to make. So now the question remains, how do I use and navigate the UI as well as the maps in the game? Pressing the back or select button, or using kind of that, touchpad as a click, will allow you to navigate through the UI elements on the screen. You can see here that the more UI elements is the more things that you'll have to cycle through. It starts off right now with my chat, goes to my journal, and then goes to my compass, in which that I can have various settings. Some elements have multiple items within them. So within the element that kind of gets selected by the group, you can press up and down to cycle through those options as well. So for my journal, I can kind of scroll through my various active quests. And there's two things that it lets me click on: the name as well as this blue location, which is the location itself. Clicking the blue location is going to bring up the map, and I can actually drill into each map accordingly by clicking on the right bumper. What's also very handy about this is that if I go through the map itself by pressing back, and then becomes the option to kind of drill back upwards, I can even do the same for the various aetherytes found in the game. So right bumper clicking an aetherite, it's going to bring up the teleport option menu, in which that I can say yes, and it will have me teleport to the location in question. Beyond basic teleportation and map drill down, you also have the ability to set a flag. Pressing the left bumper and the right bumper together will bring up and set a flag in and on that map specifically. It will also add the flag command to text chat. You can put this for the party, you can do whatever. If you see one of those locations added into your chat, you can click on it and it will add the flag to your map, thus making it easier for everybody to find out where they're going. So now let's move on to part 3. This is going to be focusing on targeting, battle, and otherwise. So there's going to be a lot of information that I want to give you. If you're ever standing in a giant group of people, there's a lot of things going on, like a quest or a new patch has dropped and you're trying to just talk to the NPC. Pressing with nothing selected, with nothing going on, pressing the general A button or X button on PlayStation will auto default to the nearest NPC. This is very handy and a feature to use. You can see here that, like, especially when players are around, it's not going to select the player by default. Right now it's nearest NPC and or enemy. So this is going to be very handy. Now also you have a couple of features. You can also lock on target. Pressing down on the left as a click will allow you to put yourself into lock on target mode. Just like with the legacy and the standard kind of control set, when you're locked on, if I press backwards, I'm going to slowly creep backwards. Pressing up is going to move me towards the target. Very Legend of Zelda-esque. So you can have the system do this for you by default, but I don't recommend it because it takes a little bit of learning to get used to. And then you can also press down as a click to get off and go ahead and move around to not be locked on that specific target. So now let's talk about soft targeting and hard targeting. Soft targeting is allowing me to press left and right on the D-pad, and you see the circle that appears around the enemy. That is my soft target. My hard target is the one that has the arrow above their head. This is going to allow me to do a couple of different things. In a party, I am able to press up and down to cycle through my party members, which gives me the ability to heal or do various buffs as necessary. Now, when I'm engaged with some enemies like I am right now, I have a couple of options of things that I can do. So if I want to easily switch target, I can actually just press the left bumper and then I can then select that as my main hard target. You can also do the same for right bumper, but it's not as comfortable depending on how you're holding it down. Now, when you're holding down the left trigger, same thing applies. You can press the right bumper and still even left bumper to easily tab target through the different targets, both your soft and your hard target. Then you also have the ability of holding down the left bumper and pressing up and down on the D-pad to cycle through your enemy list over on the left-hand side. This is going to allow you to be able to target specific enemies and give you the most flexibility possible. Now, if you're like me and you only want to focus in on enemies when you're attacking, we need to talk about target filters, which is very important, and let's go ahead and cover it right now. So you can find your target filters by going to System, Character Configuration, Control Settings, and then Filters. This is where when your weapon is sheathed and drawn comes into effect again. You can see here that my custom is non-party PCs, alliance members, all enemies, aggroing enemies, duty-specific enemies, NPCs, and objects, and I've turned off minions, signs, pets and minions, and party members. The reason I turn off party members is because they are selected via the up and down buttons on my controller, but that's going to be a preference that you're going to have to decide. When my weapon is drawn, I do not want to target any of those with the left and right, so I'm only focusing on enemies, aggroing enemies, and duty-specific enemies. Beyond all that, there's another option you have, and that's called focus targeting. You can select the menu select and use focus target to bring up and set a specific UI element on your UI, so that way you don't lose track of that target, be it a party member or an enemy. So keep that in mind, keep that on your list, so that way you have the most flexibility as well. Now, as a controller player, you're going to go into content that is called Alliance Raid content. This is 24-man content. There's a couple of things you can do here with the controller, and the first thing is to set up a filter for your alliance. So under System, Character Configuration, under Control Settings and Filters, you're going to see Filter Customization listed right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I've already set one up called Alliance Members. This is going to be enabled by holding down LB and then pressing the A. This is going to then set my filter to just Alliance members, meaning when I press left and right, it's only going to target them. You have friends, you have 4 options here that are going to be enabled by pressing any of the face buttons and holding down the L button at the same time. So to show you how that kind of works in real time, let's go ahead and hit close. I hold down L bumper, press A, and now you can see I'm in custom. So pressing left and right is not going to target anything that you can see up here because I'm in this custom targeting setting. So I can press Y to say all, B for enemies, and X for friends. So then I'm back on enemies, and you can see pressing left and right on the D-pad is going to target enemies as long as they're within a certain distance of me. The other option is you can hold down L1 and you can press left and right on the D-pad to cycle through your alliance members as well. It's not the most fast or effective way, but in case you ever needed to, it does allow you to do so without the need of a mouse. The real key for using a controller is muscle memory. It's putting things in the same position across the board, so that way you don't have to think about it, you can just react to it. Again, playing this game with long play sessions is a dream come true. It's very comfortable. Now, if you're like me and you also want to be able to have the ability to chat, I recommend checking out various different editions that you can get for controllers. I prefer like the Xbox controller style, and they have a chat pad which works real well with the game. Allows you to kind of put out different quick messages. It's not obviously the most effective. It's not gonna beat out, say, like a keyboard. This is always gonna win out over that. But for the most part, it's going to allow you to do a lot of fun and interesting things really easily. PlayStation also has a version of this, so keep that in mind if you're wanting to do some quick chatting while at the same time not having to have that keyboard and mouse if necessary. The controller, I think, is the most powerful thing that 14 brings to the table. When everybody tells me about another MMO, I ask, does it have controller support? And they say, yeah, you can kind of hack it. And then I go, well, I'm not really that interested. 14 is the is the gold standard. It is the Mercedes. It is the whatever's the most valuable thing that you can think of in terms of MMOs. And the design and just the intent that they put behind this is really incredible. I hope you guys give it a shot. If you're on the fence, hopefully you give it a shot and you see what you think about it overall. Now, at the same time, if this has been helpful for you, if I've been able to teach you something, if I'm able to help you improve your gameplay in any way and your experience with Final Fantasy XIV, please let me know. Let me know if you have any additional questions in the comments below. And like I said, be sure to hit that like button, share this video out with your friends. It really helps us out. And also check out our highlights channel. We have a lot of interesting, fun podcast guests on the show. The link will be in the description, as well as probably within a comment or two down below. I look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully you're enjoying Final Fantasy XIV as much as I do, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. For Work to Game, my name's Brian. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Take care.